Well, here we are for our next session, which I must say is pretty exciting. I'm joined by Si McNally from Power Max Racing. Hi, Si, how you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Well, what we've got is we've got a video just to play to everyone with the of the tour. So
Yes.
we'll play that now, and then once that's done, we'll then come back and do a few questions I've got about the team and everything else. So let's play the video.
No worries. So first things first, Fabrication Bay. This is where the magic happens, as it were, when we first built the Astras. So we've actually built 3 shells now. Obviously, chassis number 1, Jason Plato's car. Chassis number 2 would have been Matt Jackson's car, but that's the car that the guys have been driving this year. It all starts in here. So we're one of only 2 teams that actually build our own chassis. Everybody else is built mainly by Willie Poole and a couple of other companies. But we took the decision in 2016, sorry, when we were getting ready to build the Astras, that we were going to do it in-house. One reason, simply for cost. It's cheaper for us to do it ourselves, and secondly, it gives us the option, if we have an incident trackside, it means that rather than waiting around for other companies, so say if there was a big crash at one round where 4 shells have been damaged, if we had to send them down to Willie Poole, who builds most of the chassis for the cars, you know, we could be waiting weeks, which we can't really afford to do. So to put it in perspective, last year, Rob Collard, big smash, Thruxton, bent the back end of the car. Team got back late Sunday night. By Monday afternoon, the car was completely stripped and the shell was here on this jig here. So front part of the jig, those are the 6 bolts for the NGTC subframe. Rear, again, 4 bolts for the NGTC subframe. We'll go through those in a bit. But yeah, Monday afternoon, shell was on here. By Tuesday, the whole back end of the car was off, so rear quarter, boot floor, all of that was done. By Wednesday, it had gone off to our body shop for paint, so it makes sense to keep everything in-house. And it also means that we can do work for other people. So we've built chassis feet for a few cars, so Mini Challenge, a couple of other things, a couple of other tin tops like that. We've had a few on here that we've straightened and rebuilt. We build chassis for customers as well. Obviously can't really say what, but we've had a few interesting things in here that we've done. And looking to have a few more things over the winter as well. So yeah, this is kind of, I guess, the major tool in our armoury that most people haven't got. Yeah, it's quite a useful thing. So we'll move down, come down into the workshop itself. It's a little bit of a mess, so ignore that. But obviously we've got a few interesting things scattered around. We've got the C1 up there that's in build at the minute, the C1 Cup. So we've built, I think we've built 4 or 5 of those now. They're a really popular thing. A lot of touring car drivers do it. It's a brilliant championship. Obviously the City Car Cup that's now coming on. Again, really, really good idea. Similar concept, very slightly different on the suspension and things like that, but it's a good idea. I think championships like that are a great idea for getting people into motorsport. So come on down. We'll have a look at that in a minute. What I'm going to do is come and show you our spare chassis, because that gives you an idea of how much work actually goes into a touring car. So this is chassis number 3. Never been used. We built it back in 18 as a spare car. As you can see, it's not very much like a normal road car. A lot of people, even in the industry, think that an NGTC spec touring car is a road car with, you know, with a roll cage and some other bits on it, but it's far from that. So first stage, when we get the shells in, they come to us from the production line as a body in white from Opel themselves, or from Vauxhall. They go off to be acid dipped, get rid of any seam sealer, any nasties or anything in there, and then come back to us. They go on the chassis jig, which you've just seen. First thing we do, where your chassis legs would normally come down, there and there, chop them off at the bottom of the A-pillars, remove the entire firewall, and then start fabricating the mounts for the NGTC spec subframe. So every car on the BTCC grid runs exactly the same subframes, front and rear, so same suspension setup and everything. They're a bolt-on part. We'll show you the subframes in a minute. It gives us, it keeps things level, keeps BOP equal in theory. and it just makes things a bit easier for everyone. But yeah, so 6-bolt fixing there, which then goes through into the cage. Obviously cage is pretty substantial, but what we'll do is we'll open the door and show you inside and show you what we do with the floor and everything. So inside the car itself, it's fairly similar to a standard car, but obviously from the firewall back, we remove the firewall, new firewall in there, and then the front seat, the front pieces of the floor, they are factory, other than pedal box mounts down here, and obviously seat mounts here, air jack mounts to the 2 front corners, ballast box mount down in there, and these bits here. But yeah, central. So we build the bits we build central tunnel. So from there back, that is our mount. That is our fabrication. Driver's seat is 6 inches inboard and 12 inches back from factory position, obviously for safety and for balance. Yeah, our own tunnel, factory seat squab, and then from the seat squab back, we build the floor to about 4 inches from the back of the boot. There's about that much boot floor in there. We build between those for obviously fuel cell mount in here, air jack mount at the back, and then the 4-bolt subframe mountings in there that holds all the rear suspension and the whole rear setup basically. So semi-built up rear subframe. This is our spare one. This would go to the track like this. So standard RML subframe, same as every car on the grid. We run our air jack in there as well. Front wheel drive car, we run the power steering in the back, so it's an electro-hydraulic power steering system, which basically means we can run the power steering when the car's turned off, because obviously 10-inch wide cold slicks on a hot day, it's not something that you'd want to be turning when you're pushing the car if you didn't have the power steering. So again, rear suspension setup is all control, so every car on the grid has got the same rear arms, same rear roll bar, brakes, everything's the same. Anything, we're free on positioning, so we can adjust positioning, adjust camber shims, things like that. And obviously dampers are all inboard, so they normally sit here, push rod inboard rear dampers there with the pots and everything on. We are free to do what we like internally on those. They're all Penske units, so every car on the grid has got the same Penske body on it. We've actually got our own damper dyno, and we work really closely with IBAC to do a lot of custom spring rate work. Again, that's another service we offer to customers is the damper rebuild. We're a KW Motorsport Centre, so damper rebuild, damper servicing and tuning and things like that. We do a lot of that for not only race teams but other road customers, kind of off the back of knowledge gleaned through touring cars. Yeah, we'll have a look at a front subframe. So front subframe, this is obviously a bare subframe with nothing in it. What would normally happen before a race weekend is the guys will build the subframe up in sub-assembly before we go. So obviously engine, gearbox, all suspension, brakes, hydraulics, everything basically sits in this frame. And we carry a spare one with us at the track, so we've got a big flight case that has a pretty much completely built up front clip on it. So obviously if we have an incident and we need to swap an engine, swap a subframe, swap all of that over, we can do that really simply. It takes to do a complete engine change or a complete front end change takes about an hour and a half on one of the touring cars. It's a fairly, you know, it's quite an involved job, but everything's designed to be simple and easy, just like the gearbox. And we'll take you into the gearbox room now and show you one of those, just so you can see how simple it is. NGTC spec gearbox, 6-speed sequential X-Track unit. Every car on the grid runs exactly the same gearbox. Ratios inside it, we are fixed on first, second and third, but we're free on fourth, fifth and sixth, just to kind of keep things equal and keep the bop right. They're a pretty simple premise. So this is a strip box. So here, so obviously engine bolted there. This end works as a cassette system. In fact, we've got a complete box there. So that is end casing. That'll come off And inside there are the two shafts with all the ratios and everything on them. So it means that when we want to change ratios or look at anything on the car, we don't have to take the whole gearbox off the car. So the guys on a Saturday after qualifying, because we want to check the state of the internals as part of our lifing process, we will completely strip the box down to that, and they will check all the gears. They'll change preload on the diff. They can basically do what they want to do, and that kind of leads us onto the lifing side of things. Lifing is a really important part of what we do. We use a computer system called LifeCheck, which is absolutely fantastic, and basically means that every part in the car's got a serial number on it. You can use an RFID chip if you want to, so we know exactly how many kilometers, how many hours of use something has had, and how that fits in profile wise to its life, basically to minimize mechanical failures, which is one of the reasons that, touch wood, we tend to not really have any mechanical failures, because we life everything, and actually we follow that down to every program we do. So even the TCR, VW Racing Cup, Junior Saloons, everything's lifed, and I think that's part of how we've built up a good reputation, you know, from nothing in 2015 up to a factory team within 2 years, was by lifing everything, managing it properly. Martin Broadhurst, our team manager, he's ex-Pro Drive, ex-888. He is a very accomplished engineer, and he is very much of the do everything right or don't do it. And we're the whole team, that's kind of the ethos behind it, is do everything properly. So dampers, as we said, Penske dampers. Every car on the grid uses the same units. One of the major tools in our arsenal is our damper dyno. So we actually take that to the track with us, and it just means that if we haven't got the correct spring rates, or if something's not quite right and we need to make any changes, or we need to rebuild a damper, we can do it there and then in the truck at the track. This gets used a lot for customer work as well. So we do a lot of build, a lot of tuning, a lot of rebuild of customers' dampers, whether it's race cars, track cars. We've actually done some autograss stuff, which is quite cool. It's actually a really fascinating thing to watch Martin, the team manager. He is the man that kind of understands and can decode everything. It's a genuinely interesting process watching him. Every time the touring car goes out, for probably 4 or 5 days beforehand, he's sat here with his laptop with this, building our dampers up. It's just it's quite a rare thing, and it's a really useful part of our armoury. Obviously, main event, BTCC Car. As we said, this is chassis number 2. So this is the car that we've been using this season for all of our guest drivers. Driven by Senna Proctor in 17 and 18. This is the car that actually won our first ever race in 2018. So the car itself, you've seen the chassis and everything. Engine is a 2-litre turbo Swindon power plant. Can't show you under the bonnet for obvious reasons. But again, so that's the Toka power plant. So if you build an NGTC spec car to run in BTCC, you either have to run an engine from the stable of the vehicle. So this being a Vauxhall, we could use either a Vauxhall or Opel engine or a PSA engine, but it has to be a 2-litre turbo. But we opted to use the Swindon power plant, which is the official Toka engine, which ironically is actually based on a Vauxhall engine. They put out between 350 and 380 horsepower depending on boost levels. Again, that's all to do with BOT. Car itself has to weigh 1,280 kilos at the end of the race, with driver weight in it plus any ballast. So it's not, a lot of people assume that everything in there is carbon fibre and it's all done to save weight and everything, but it isn't. It's about having the weight in the right places, and we've still got to hit that minimum weight. So for example, when Jess Hawkins drove the car this year, she was actually the lightest ever touring car driver, and we had to ballast the car to make that weight up. Obviously success ballast is quite an important, it's quite a big part of it, quite a big part of the championship. So success ballast is a fixed area, so inside the car. That box there is our ballast box, so we always know where it is. You know, that's factored into our calculations of centre of gravity and everything. When the guys set the car up, they will the driver always has a target weight. So, for example, JP, he has his target weight, and we know exactly what he's going to weigh every race weekend. So when we're setting the car up, we've got lead weights that weigh the same as JP. They'll go in the driver's seat, and then the guys will do the setup. We've used absolute alignment equipment now for the last 3 years, and it's been absolutely fantastic. Most people still use the old bar and string method, which works fine. We've sanity checked our equipment quite a few times with bar and string, and it is absolutely spot on every time, and it just gives us that little bit of advantage. When you're literally fighting for thousandths of a second, you need that. So brakes, AP, BTCC setup, 368mm 6 pots on the front, I think 325mm on the back if I'm correct. Twin pot, again, BTCC spec ones. JP goes through a lot of brakes, other drivers don't, it's dependent on their driving style. We tend to change, JP will probably change discs and pads every session, whereas other drivers less so because you don't need to, but still they form part of the lifing process, so we'll only use a few millimetres of the pad and then they're done for us. Same with the discs, once they've had a couple of sessions on them, they're done. Tyres, 20 slicks per car per weekend new, plus carryovers. So obviously tyres are quite an integral part of it. We didn't use any of the option tyres this year, it was just the prime medium compound Goodyears and the hard compound at Thruxton, which kept things nice and simple, to be honest, because obviously every season before that we had to use the option tyre, which we had, I think the rules are slightly changing for next year, but we had to choose what tyres we were going to run before qualifying on the Saturday, and we could only run for the year 3 in race 1, 3 in race 2, 3 in race 3. It's all quite complicated. Sometimes, you know, as a lot of you racers will appreciate, sometimes your soft compound will give you an advantage, sometimes your hard compound will give you an advantage, but it just mixes it up, and it's actually quite a cool part of the BTCC that kind of keeps things mixed up a little bit. So carbon fibre is actually outlawed as a material. The only place we're allowed to use them is door cards, crash structure, and in the seat. So we worked with MotorDrive to design this seat. The homologation for seats in BTCC is the highest level, so I think it shares it with WEC. I think that's the only thing it actually shares it with, and it uses a 6-bolt fixing. So on the cage at the back, you can see there it's mounted to the cage. We worked with MotorDrive, British seat company of some 40 odd years, to develop that seat, and we've run them for 2 years now, and they're absolutely fantastic. Steering wheel wise, when somebody drives the car for a year, they can choose their own setup of buttons on the wheel, and the same on the dashboard in there. Shifters over here, so 6-speed sequential shifter, no flappy paddles or anything, this is all proper mechanical shifter. Brake bias adjuster down there. It's all pretty rudimentary, to be honest. There's no fancy traction control systems, there's no fancy ABS systems. It's very much driving the car as a proper car. The cars themselves are actually a very difficult thing to drive, which I think some people don't appreciate. There's a lot of rear rotation on them, so rather than, you know, a lot of people think front wheel drive race car with the slicks on it must be an easy car to drive. These are, everyone that's been in them from other stuff has just said they're a completely other world to drive. They're a very hard thing to drive quickly until you get your head around them.
Well, there we go. Thank you very much, Si, for the tour.
Absolutely cringed watching that.
Well, I WhatsApped you earlier laughing because I said I thought you were just the pretty boy of the team. I didn't know that you were technical minded as well.
I'm not quite sure how to take that.
Well, no, to be honest, I mean that's everything. You literally can take care of everything from start to finish them for the team.
Try to. I'm not technical by any means, but I think once you've been around, we're quite a small team. We're quite close knit. I think when you spend so much time together, you just pick up on everything. You get involved in things, and it's interesting. I like engineering. I like mechanical things. So yeah, you just pick up on these things, I think.
Yeah, of course. No, definitely. Well, let's talk about the season this year then. Obviously, COVID has kind of got in its way, and the pandemic has ruined quite a lot of racing, but the elite end of motorsport has been able to carry on. So it's great that the touring cars have. And
Yeah.
you've obviously had not had your core drivers. You've actually introduced new drivers almost every round. So how did that come about?
So we kind of made the decision at the start of the season when they decided to delay, to run a condensed season. We had a conversation with our sponsors, with Jason, with the drivers. It was kind of a collective decision to basically pause the commercial element, to pause the season. But obviously, we wanted to continue to support the championship. We're quite a small community in the touring car world. We wanted to support the championship. We didn't want to step away from it completely. So we decided to run one car, kind of give our sponsors a free year, basically. So everyone that's on the car this year is going to be on the car next year, and they've had this year for free. And just kind of give some opportunity to some up and coming drivers and people that wouldn't necessarily, that maybe wanted to do BTCC, have provenance in other series, but wouldn't potentially get the opportunity to drive in a competitive touring car because it's such an expensive way to go racing. And it's not an easy thing to get involved with. We just kind of felt, we're quite big on bringing people through, whether it's racing, whether it's engineering, kind of anything. We're quite supportive, and we wanted to give some people some opportunities, basically.
Yeah, no, fantastic. So you kind of touched on it in that interview just then. Is it a car that a competitive racing driver can jump into? Is it easy enough for them, or is it you kind of mentioned about it being very pivotal and on the nose to drive?
They're not. From all accounts, they're not an easy car to drive at all. They rotate quite heavily from the rear. They're very, we're front wheel drive. There's rear wheel drive cars, on the grid as well. But I think it's one of those cars that people, for example, Brad Philpott, who drove the car at Brands Hatch, he is a very, very successful front wheel drive racer in Germany. He's won 2 VLN championships in front wheel drive. He got in the car and he said it was completely alien to anything he'd ever driven. I think they're very different to anything else in the way the NGTC the setup is.
Yeah. Okay. So when we go back to the team and the setup that you've got there, we don't have to be touring car drivers to get involved with PowerMax racing. So if I was to have my ordinary tin top car, you are involved with car preparation and engineering and things like that as well.
Yeah, we do a lot of prep for people, actually. It's not something we shout about too much. We probably should shout about it a little bit more. And I think people assume that because because it says BTCC in our repertoire, that there's a 0 on the end of every price that we have. There's an extra 0 on it. But we do a lot of car prep for people. We do a lot of we've built numerous cars for people from scratch. From space frame chassis to just a roll cage and a track car. We use all of the equipment we've got, so the dynamics equipment, the absolute alignment setup, the damper dyno, everything like that is available as a service for other people. Whether it's repair of a chassis, whether it's suspension rebuild and tuning, whether it's setting up a car for whether it's a track car or a full-on race car, we do a lot of customer work for people. That's kind of the bread and butter of our business, to be honest. Okay,
so let's look at next year. Jason looks like he's coming back.
He's back.
Anyone else that's going to accompany him, or we can't say yet?
There's certainly some conversations going on. We actually had somebody in here today that we've been talking to.
I think there's probably 4 or 5 serious prospects at the minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're you know what, we're in a good place for next year. Actually, I think the way we paused everything commercially has put us in a really strong position for the start of next year. We're doing a lot of car developments. I've actually got one of the engineers, JP's engineers, actually sat in the office behind us now doing some stuff with one of our engineers. You know, we're certainly aiming with JP and whoever is in the second car with him. You know, we're gunning for the win this year. We're not there just to make up the numbers.
Fantastic. Well, let's
yeah.
hope that is the case. We wish you obviously the best of luck for next year, and it's great to see that, you know, Elite Motorsport has able to carry on, and we've all enjoyed watching it and seeing all the different pedigree of drivers coming through.
It's been a strange year.
It has. Well, I've got 3 touring car drivers up next, and one of my questions to them is obviously how they found it without the fans. But I guess that's something that is obviously a revenue earner, as well as it's something that you kind of need for everyone to watch.
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, the TV numbers are so important for, you know, the BTCC. It's one of the most visible championships in the world. ITV show it live every weekend. We got just under 20 million people watching it in 2019, just the live broadcasts. You know, even without the fans there, the atmosphere is very, very odd, but it's good that it's still on TV, and the support from the fans has been absolutely amazing. Like, you know, we wouldn't be able to do what we do without the support of so many people, and they've just been absolutely brilliant this year. Absolutely fantastic. Great guns. All right. Well, look, we'll wish you the best. Thank you for doing that video and the tour of the premises. Really enjoyed that.